Welcome into the Backroads Bill podcast. I'm Ben, and we have been very lucky on this podcast to have explorers on, adventurers, conservationists, painters, photographers, etc. And today, not just do we have on a couple, the first time we've had a couple on this show, but also this couple does all of those things combined. They are conservationists, they are explorers, they are artists, and it's really exciting to have them on. If you're in the Lake Superior area, you've probably heard of them, as we are pleased to have Joanie and Gary McGuffin, who are a staple in that area, and they've done so much work with the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy, as well as what they've been doing with Indigenous communities and in the Boreal forests in and around the Lake Superior area. So we get into a great conversation with them about all their exploits in conservation, their adventures, and it was just an absolutely fantastic conversation. So all of that on the way, but first, a word from today's lead sponsor, Source for Sports.
Sports aren't just what we do, they're who we are. Source for Sports North Bay is your advocate, your local support system, and your biggest fan. 1321 Fisher Street has grown from a place where knowledgeable experts can help you find exactly the gear you need, to the hotbed of team uniforms, apparel and fanwear, to a community stronghold for all the things that truly matter to you and your family's sports journey. We love helping you find your first pair of skates, as much as we relish supporting local leagues, teams, and athletes. Wherever your sports journey takes you, make sure you visit Source for Sports North Bay at 1321 Fisher Street so we can help you along your way.
So after a number of technical difficulties, and we were supposed to record this earlier, we finally did it. Bill, I know this has been a long time coming, so I want to throw it to you to introduce today's guests.
Gary and Joanie McGuffin. I mean, when you think about ecological conservation and a dynamic duo, and I was thinking, Ben, we're getting close to 100 episodes of the Backroads Bill podcast, but I don't think we've ever had a couple on. We've had multiple people on before, but not a couple. And of course, when I think about Northern Ontario, and that's often our backdrop, but all the people in Northern Ontario, we're glad to have Joanie and Gary McGuffin. They've been at this journeying and conservation their entire lives, and I think that's the backdrop for our conversation with them today on the Backroads Bill podcast.
We've had a number of explorers and adventurers on, and definitely you guys fall into this category. So I want to just kind of start off not near the beginning, but kind of near the beginning, and what drove you, because you also not just do you explore, you're also conservationists as well. So what fueled your passions for what you do in the outdoors?
Yeah, take us back to when your first date and then that first trip on the Mississauga, et cetera, at Seneca College, and fast forward into here's our life.
Well, I think for me, even before that, it has to do with your parents and the experiences you've had with them. And my mom and dad were 43 and 42 when they had me, so I was late, and I was the only one. And they were already paddlers, hunters, fishers. So everywhere that they went, I was tagging along. So the lifestyle of living in the outdoors came from literally the day I was born to my first summer on Rabbit Lake in Temagami. And that's all I knew was the sound of water splashing against the sides of the canoe as I lay on the bottom of the canoe looking up at the clouds and the boughs of the white pines overhead as we paddle under.
Yeah, I was talking about Rabbit Lake the other day and Blueberry Lake and the old growth there, but over to Joanie and your and what all the influences in your early life.
Well, similar to Gary, though further south in the Muskokas, parents that just took me out into the woods and we looked under rocks and we walked across beaver dams and we got in the canoe and we just were on the water and on the snow in the winter. And my siblings, my sister and a brother, and just having that opportunity to be outdoors and have people that have curiosity about nature, like throughout my entire life, right to my mom at age 94. 24 who looks at everything from the fruit flies on her bananas to the turkeys outside her window and is just filled with wonder every day about this beautiful living world that we're in. And so when Gary asked me in college, would you like to walk the Appalachian Trail with me? I said, sure. Where is it?
We were on the Mississippi River, paddling the Mississippi River to James Bay when I asked you that.
And that was our first journey together, was to go down this river that, to my parents at least, was like might as well have been the Amazon. It was so foreign. And Gary reassured them that he knew where to go on these rivers and find his way following maps. And I knew how to paddle, but I had never been that far north in Ontario. And that first journey was amazing. We didn't really take a lot of food with us. And Gary said, don't worry, we're going to fish. And sure, we fished all down that river. And it was the fall. It was just amazing. All the migrations of birds, the sandhill cranes, the discovery of this incredible, which is like one of the largest wetlands in North America, if not largest.
Now, Gary, I know that river very well, and we've had actually the proponents that there is a snowshoe trail into Thunderhouse Falls, and they've been trying to include it as part of the park. So was that asked before or after Thunderhouse Falls, if you recall?
It was after. We were, maybe approaching the Moose River, where the Mississippi flows into the Moose. That's probably where we were.
You were kind of sure there anyway. But after that, what was the first? Take us to the first book and how all that started, because you started to package your lifestyle, and this is before your daughter was born as well.
Well, after walking the Appalachian Trail, in fact, it was like each journey, we were talking about sort of the next journey. So we're on the Appalachian Trail and we're talking about our own beautiful place we live, how we love water. Yes, we're walking, but what we'd really like to be is in a canoe and paddling. And that sort of started the conversation about paddling across Canada, paddling from the saltwater to saltwater. And as we started piecing that journey together, like the common bond that we have had through our entire life is this idea that, the land and the waters, that somehow we could be a voice in a positive way to encourage people to get into the outdoors, to share their own stories, to share our story, and that the land was really the teacher and the discovery of the people across the country on that journey. We never went really into that with the idea of writing a book about it. We just really honestly wanted to do this journey, which linked together the greatest freshwater lake on earth, Lake Superior, that I had grown up with. The only coffee table book in my parents' or our home was Lake Superior, The Haunted Shore by Bruce Littlejohn and Wayland Drew. And Gary and I said, okay, Lake Superior's got to be part of this. Discovery of the white whales in the St. Lawrence, got to start with saltwater to saltwater in the Arctic, and Gary's connections to northern Saskatchewan. And so it was like this, piece of just seeing the landscape, and then the very convenient way that the glaciers left an amazing connected waterway route that linked us from the St. Lawrence Gulf to the Arctic coast at Tuktoyaktuk. So, yeah.
Well, I just did 4,000 miles in a car coming there and back to Peawanuck, but you did 6,000 miles over 2 years from St. Lawrence to the Beaufort, and of course, where rivers run, 1988. So that must have, the whole adventure of that package and doing that, and then after coming back, how did you decide what's next?
What we looked at was what first drew us to the journey across Canada, and that was Lake Superior. And we had looked, and I'd never been to Lake Superior before. I came from paddling the inland lakes of Temagami, the Nestogan. That's where I grew up. So coming to a vast body of water lakes like Lake Superior was intimidating. But because we'd left ourselves a whole month of our journey from ice out on the St. Lawrence to the Paw in Manitoba, that's where we were trying to get to the first year of open water paddling season. We we had a lot of respect for Superior. We'd heard a lot of stories about Lake Superior. So we approached it with lots of time to paddle it. But we ran into this 2 weeks of high pressure, and the water was calm, and we paddled from the Sioux to Grand Portage. It's about 500 miles in 12 days. So we were motoring, and we just had this a fantastic experience on the north shore of Lake Superior. Nothing like the stories and storms that we'd heard of, and we really just fell in love with that experience. And we thought, wouldn't it be amazing to spend a whole paddling season and circumnavigate the whole lake, and do that in 2 canoes as opposed to a tandem canoe that we were at that time paddling across Canada.
And I know one of the questions you were asking there was about the bicycle track. And how was it that you got on these bicycles? And so in between those 2 journeys, we felt like we have felt the land through the water connections, and that we really needed to feel the land through its topography connections. So by the land, by the water. So like connecting those dots from Tuktoyakta down through Dawson and Whitehorse and down through the BC interior mountains out to the coast, the Queen Charlottes, and then keeping this route as far north as we could go to end on the tip of Newfoundland at Lancy Meadows, the Viking settlement up there. And that kind of road connection connected to again, all these communities that are really connected by the waterways, but seeing them from the perspective of a bicycle was like a more, I guess, we were still going self-propelled, but an entirely different kind of connection.
Yeah, those different mediums are important. And just for the viewers and the listeners, going back to 1995 and Superior Journeys on an Inland Sea, we have many things in common, family and otherwise, as per our family spending time on Lake Superior, and it is a common denominator. But I also like to point out, back in those days, we're kind of post Bill Mason, but we canoed Lake Superior. We did not get in kayaks. I remember the first time going up there and people looked at the kayaks on the top of our car and thinking, what are those things? These great big long sea kayaks. They were fiberglass, and that's going back into the 1990s. But nonetheless, that the question is, and I think, Ben, this is, how do you get, and I know you live on Goulet River and you're in a paradise, but what is it, do you think that, and I say to people, if you're going to go to Northern Ontario, and we can discuss the various aspects of the Shield and Lake Superior, Manitoulin, but what is it about Lake Superior that draws you? I think, and I tell people, you must go to Lake Superior. You must go to Lake Superior Provincial Park or Paqassaw or up to Sleeping Giant, but you must do that. But from your 2 perspectives, what is it?
Well, first of all, it's this giant inland sea that's freshwater. And then there's all the rivers that flow into it, like the Goulet, the Batchewana, the Montreal, the Mishpicotton. These are all rivers that are now just in our own backyard. But there's something, as Joanie as an artist, myself as a photographer, there's a light that reflects across the lake. The lake's 32,000 square miles. So you can imagine what I call it the Sunshine Coast of Ontario. Because there is no, even when the group of 7 visited here, they talked about the light, the way it falls across the land is like no other place they'd ever seen. And we just fell in love with that east side of Lake Superior. The northeast shore of Lake Superior was one of those places that you can spend a whole summer out on the lake and not see another person. You might hear an aircraft, but you're on your own. And it's such once you get to know the lake and you develop like what we call a mind map of the lake, it's such it's just a healing place, and it's you just learn so much every day. We learn so much on every trip. You think you know it all, but everything is a learning experience, and there's so much to explore on this largest freshwater lake on the planet.
Lovely vernacular, Joanie.
I guess we also have this really beautiful connection between when our daughter was born here in Gooley and this very early journey that we went on. A friend in Southern Ontario in Grand Bend who built this beautiful cedar strip canoe, 21 feet long. And, we had our Malamute and our 3-year-old daughter and the two of us and all loaded up and headed out from Pigeon River, heading along this Great Lakes Heritage Coast and the North Shore of Lake Superior together. And Seela climbing out on the bow of that beautiful, like she saw it like a horse, and she held on to the reins of the rope on the bow of the canoe, and we're going up and down in the waves because I didn't know. I'm a new mom, essentially. She's not very old. Will she be terrified out here and just want to go home? And she loved the water. And I think that kind of, she couldn't not because we love it so much. But getting to see the lake in these grand journey view that we had done on our own, where, we were just going a lot of miles every day and we were seeing a lot of country. But now we were having to stop lots along the way and get down on our hands and knees on the beaches and build little structures out of, all the little things we were finding on the beaches and making stories and just traveling slower and more intimately and seeing that world. And like one of the images Gary took once of our daughter when she was younger and the swimming in the waves at the Sand River. And she's just immersed in this clear, beautiful wave of water. And that image just really sticks with me because we are 3/4 water. And there's nothing that you feel more like the water in Lake Superior, the clarity and the beauty, the idea that you can immerse yourself in it, you can open your mouth and you can swallow this water is like an amazing experience that most people don't have. And it is the top of the Great Lakes. So yeah, that images. And then just to say, it was so funny for Seela because as she grew up and she went to other places where people would go, yeah, we're going to the beach. And then she'd arrive at a beach that was like, 10, 20 feet long. It's like, this is not a beach.
It's the same with our daughter, Allie Windy, and there's only one of them. Same thing, same all along that coast, had similar experiences. But you're both artists, and this is a segue to that, that award-winning 2015 documentary film, The Painted Land in Search of the Group of Seven, how important that influences on you. And again, that's another pinnacle moment among the 8 books, but we're not counting books and films. And Gary, you've got a new exhibit coming up on May the 15th in Toronto, which we'll talk about at the end. But what about that particular film and what that meant to you? Because they were influenced and we are influenced, but certainly you have been influenced in everything you do.
Well, I think we're always looking at ways to connect people with a landscape. And the Group of Seven began that 100 years ago. And the fact they came here and their access to the backcountry was through the Algoma Central Railway, which is still there. And a lot of that landscape is privately owned. So there isn't a protected status for it. So that's really why we started looking for a Group of Seven painting sites in Algoma and the North Shore of Lake Superior, because we saw that as an avenue to see a cultural protected status for that landscape. And it's something that everybody knew about the Group of Seven, but when we spoke with Duncan Michano, chief of at Pictagon in Schnabik at the mouth of the Pic River, and we asked permission to explore the landscape of the Anishinaabe on the North Shore, with the idea of creating like a cultural interpretive trail to go to Group of Seven painting sites, and both by water and by land. And Duncan said, everybody knows who the Group of Seven are. No one knows about the Anishinaabe and our people and our landscape. And at that time, a wonderful understanding was born. And we've been able to take that to heart with wherever we've gone through Algoma and the North Shore, and applied that to other places like the Group of Seven painted, such as Georgian Bay and Algonquin Park.
Yeah, I referenced Duncan. Actually, we had somebody on talking about high falls in the Pic River, and he's the chief, and met him first at Puckasaw National Park when he worked there. But go ahead, Joanie, you were going to add to that.
Well, just this connection between the honesty of any artist who has gone out into nature, and whether they produce music or it's visual art form. My brother-in-law is a potter on the North Shore with the materials of clay. There are these beautiful connections when you are out there and from a visual perspective, like the Group of Seven, the light. And it is so unique in Northern Ontario across many different places. I learned that through the paintings. I'm not a visual artist in the way that Gary is with the photography or the Group of Seven or other painters. But we have this incredible sight ability, but yet we seem to see so little. And it's because we don't use our full range of senses all the time. And I found the project with the Group of Seven, the immersiveness of sitting out in nature, sitting on a rock where exactly one of the Group of Seven painters like McDonald, would have sat and seen this scene, to be in those exact places in the exact season at the exact fall of the light in that particular time of the year. And the way the color of the forest, be it the spring or the fall, those were the two seasons they came, or the late fall on the North Shore, see the snow. That part of the immersiveness is what all of human beings need to get back to in our relationship with nature. So they had a lot to teach me about that, but so do the paintings on the rock at Agawa Rock, and in many places is the materials of the land that have shown the creativity of the human spirit everywhere in these places across the land for thousands of years. So we're all artists.
It's time to Toyota at North Bay Toyota. Attention truck lovers. Have you been Tundra struck? The powerful and dependable Toyota Tundra is the new definition of grit. Ask us about amazing lease deals on a 2025 Tundra Double Cap SR 4-wheel drive, and experience ingenious levels of capability, technology, and refinement. Or maybe you're an SUV lover? Take advantage of a limited shipment of 2025 RAV4s and discover the perfect blend of style, comfort, and efficiency in a compact SUV that ignites your desire to explore. Right now, get excellent lease deals on the Toyota RAV4 LE all-wheel drive and more. It's time to Toyota at North Bay Toyota, 640 McEwen, or online at northbaytoyota.com for details.
Another project, a huge project, going back to 2006. And Ben, I know I've been hogging the questions, but going back to 2006 and the formation of Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy, involving others, and that's the past, present, and future. But tell us about that. That's important. That's important life's work.
You stole both of my questions, by the way.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Okay, well.
Both things you stole. So I got nothing right now. And usually I'm like the smart guy.
Yeah, okay.
Well, you two are kind of like Gary and I. You're always just like, you work so much together. You're
did you say that?
in each other's thoughts.
Well, I often say I'm smarter than I look, but I'm looking over at Ben now.
I thought you were going to say you're smarter than
me. We're
me.
looking at two really smart people that have had a journey in life and doing important stuff. But tell us about the Conservancy, please do.
So June 1st, 2004, we're just over 20 years old now, forming the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy. So it is a mouthful, but it was formed to tell the story of not only the greatest expanse of fresh water on Earth, but the whole watershed matters. That story that connects all the waters that flow into from the height of land around Lake Superior, it takes away that line that you see on maps that divides the U.S. and Canada, and maybe it's the wrong way to put it these days, but that line across water is not a line that anything in nature recognizes, from, the migratory birds to the fish that live in the waters to the very waters themselves, that this beautiful being of water we share in our own bodies with every other human being and other forms of life. And so forming that conservancy was in both sides of the border as a charity in the US and in Canada, was a very unique proposition. And we have 3 preserves, a wetland, a height of land forest, and the group of islands off what is Lake Superior Provincial Park, but better to be known as Nanabajung. It's a very sacred place to Batchewana First Nation, and up at Agawa Bay to the Métis. There is also the work of the Water Trail. And when Trans-Canada Trail came to us and asked us about connecting the waterway of, how are we going to connect Sault Ste. Marie to Thunder Bay back before the sesquicentennial and get this finished, there is no better trail than one of water. It is like, for thousands of years, the water has been connecting us all. Indigenous nations all around Lake Superior know that reality of our connection. It's a highway of water. It's a heritage highway. And so it became a very easy project for us in that regard to be involved with. And then the third thing that we've been involved with is actually getting people out there. And it probably speaks most to Gary's and I experience, is Canoes for Conservation. And having a big 36-foot canoe and getting on the water and doing interpretive, cultural, and ecological tours. And we always wanted the possibility for these to be an Indigenous-led opportunity as well. And so that kind of leads to our partnership with the Métis community here in Sault Ste. Marie. And the Conservancy's been a really tremendous life ambition project for us, because discovering Lake Superior on that cross-Canada journey years ago for Gary and I, we arrived here by the water. Neither of us had ever seen the lake before, and we came by canoe and we followed the waterways, and then we left this body of water to connect it, up to the Arctic coast. And to see the land and feel the land and know these waters in that way, that was a really symbolic piece of our life, I guess. And to have our daughter grow up here and to make family and, friends here, it's just been a beautiful, it's just a beautiful part of this planet that you can see from outer space.
Well, yours is a love story, but we've had Roy McGregor on the show, and of course, Roy says, no canoe, no Canada, no canoe, no McGuffins, and no canoe, no watershed trail, so to speak. But tell us something I didn't know. This Smithsonian traveling exhibit, I must have missed this, Knowing Stones of the Boreal Forest, I guess started in April 2023, and it's ongoing. Tell us how that started and where it's at right now.
Well, that all became a reality through art, science, adventure, and we were looking at the Boreal Forest. And so we're going back 15 years ago, and we needed to come up with some way of informing the folks, particularly in the United States, about the value of the Boreal Forest and what all the products being harvested out of the Boreal Forest, what they were going to. So we needed to figure out what would we do to attract people to be interested in the Boreal. And we also needed to work with what we thought would be like maybe the foremost educational institution in the United States. And so we kind of hit on the Smithsonian Institute. And then the idea was to take landscape artists from anywhere in the world on month-long Boreal River expeditions. So that's what we did. We got a lot of folks together, all landscape wildlife artists, and we started doing these journeys across northern Canada, from the George River all the way over to the Noatak in Alaska. And so we made a trip down to the Smithsonian to first of all tell the department heads about really what the Boreal Forest was. And one of the department heads of ornithology basically got up with all the heads of these departments at the Smithsonian and said, do you know the value of the boreal forest when it just comes to boreal migrating birds? And that's where all of a sudden the Smithsonian said, we need to create an exhibition here. And then when climate change became very obvious and top of the mind, the Smithsonian said, we would like to take your concept of what you've been doing and create an exhibition, not just about the boreal forest, but to tell the story of climate change through what's happening in the boreal forest. So that's where that all came from, was just journeys by canoe and combining paddling with art and the science concept, which is what the Smithsonian brings to it.
Yeah, what fun is that? What fun is that you're having?
One thing I'd like to add to that, too, is that more than 650 Indigenous nations live across the Boreal in this part of the world. And those voices are on the leading edge of climate change on this planet. And their voices around what is happening to the ice, what is happening to the forest, the land, the warming planet. That was to be part of this story as well. And the birds are incredibly important part of this story because of their migrations that cross the continents and their nesting, 3 billion songbirds, but they go past and they're at the feeders of, Americans in the States all over. And you can identify with those friends that come to your backyard, and then to learn about the journeys that they take. And they wouldn't be here if it weren't for this vast, largest terrestrial ecosystem on Earth. So maybe that's been a common thread for us, has been kind of the big picture of things. And that's a really cool thing about Indigenous wisdom, is that I feel today we have this incredible Western science knowledge, and it's been like incredible technology is connecting all these amazing brains together in this vast big brain of connectedness, from the oceans to the atmosphere to telling all these climate stories. But all of it kind of rests in the big canoe, Dichichiman, of Indigenous knowledge, because people have known for thousands of years ways to connect with fires on the land, connect with the fishery, and being in a honorable relationship with the land where we see water as spirit and life. That has been our biggest error of all, is that we look at things as objects, and Indigenous languages even teach us that everything's a relationship. So, it's...
Well,
sorry, I'm getting a little heady.
No, not at all, because that first came out in an early David Suzuki book, was Wisdom of the Elders, and that's where that talk started, I think, for all of us. And so hold it up now, the Superior Journeys on an Inland Sea. Is it right there? Because that's one of my favorite books of the 8. When we're talking about print, there it is right there. Everyone should have that, and beautiful photography. And Gary, that's a good segue into the upcoming exhibition at the Twist Gallery in Toronto entitled Untamed Things. Tell us a little bit about that, and because you look very resplendent today, and because we are taping on St. Paddy's Day, so we should have a shameless promotional moment for both St. Paddy's Day and this upcoming exhibit on May 15th.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Bill. So I want to go back to Algoma, and a gentleman by the name of Bill Aitken, James Aitken, who is an artist, came to us after seeing the film Painted Land and said, I have a group of friends that I go out and paint with. They're recognized in their own right as landscape painters. Could you take us to some of these Group of 7 painting sites in Algoma? And I said, sure, I'd love to do that. We'll go by canoe, and we'll spend as long as you want. So it ended up being 7 artists. We started out with many more than that. We went up to the Montreal River and just had a great time. And we put together an exhibition 6 weeks after we got back. That exhibition sold out. It went to another exhibition space. That exhibition space sold out. And then we did a trip over to Georgian Bay, our same group, and we said, this is a really cool theme. What we've got going here. Let's go to a different wilderness landscape each year, do a body of work, and then exhibit it. So that's how the Untamed Things Arts Group was born. So this year, or last fall, we went up to the north end of Ababaka, because we all know Alex Mathias up there, and we spent a week with Alex and his family. So we explored that whole back country of the old growth forest with our Untamed Things artist group. And then James figured out an exhibition space at the Twist Gallery for the month of May in Toronto. So we'll all be converging there May 1st and setting up the exhibition. We will actually launch it on the 15th, and we'll bring it all down on the 30th and then start planning our next adventure.
Wonderful. Did Alex take you to the petroglyphs on Waskakenika?
Yes, years ago, actually, on the ancient forest journey back at
7.
Yeah, 97. When we first paddled through there, that's when we first met Alex.
Yeah.
So we, that was a great time with Alex.
It's a sacred spot, and they are petroglyphs. You know, we know lots of pictographs and petroforms, but petroglyphs, and they're there. And Ben, I'm feeling really sorry today on this. Go ahead,
I'm here.
Ask a question.
Thank you. I'm still here. Hi guys, how are you doing?
I'm Ben.
Ben, who?
Well, I was expecting after the conservation question for you to throw to me, because that would have been a real low blow.
Yeah.
But I did have a question about that.
Okay.
One of the interesting things about conservation is that if you're doing your job right, you can't see the effects of it because nothing's really changed, right? But one of the interesting things about conservation is how important it is. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a hypothetical here. Let's say that you and no one else was doing conservation in these boreal forests and on Superior and all the work that you're doing with the watershed. Where do you think in the last, let's say 50 years, where do you think the land would be if those efforts weren't happening?
I'm going to answer first because I'd like to go back to if it weren't for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, many of us would be, although we know the land and the waters in a very deep and connected way and growing up, all of those things that we've shared, we have kind of seen ourselves as human beings as something separate from it. But the Indigenous wisdom that has carried on in languages and traditionals and cultural practices that has often been like hiding under the radar for, several generations, the immense effort that it has taken to get to where we are today, I really have to bring that forward as that is the place of true power in the understanding of a relationship with the natural world. And no matter how hard we try as environmentalists and conservationists, we've often been very much the, patriarchal caregiver, savior of, even to the extent that we've hurt Indigenous nations in their cultural practices because we haven't understood the relationship of harvesting from the land, foods and other ways of knowing, food is a good one. So I really want to acknowledge that because we are all from our colonial backgrounds really very humble and grateful for the immense effort that it has taken to survive as Indigenous nations. And I think that there's no single organization or look at where we are today. Unfortunately, all the, absolutely chaotic stuff that is going on in the United States, that it's pouring over and around the world when you have the disassembling of the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration that does all that incredible research around the world, from the oceans to the atmosphere to climate change and all those incredible connections. That wisdom has been held and known by Indigenous people forever. So I don't know if Gary wants to add to that, but I just really feel very strongly about that. There's no organization that, we just all working together, little pieces of a brain, but that brain has actually been the Canoe, Gichichiman, forever. We just haven't recognized that it's been there in our midst all along.
Yeah, and what I was thinking was like the industrialization of our world, right? Because you think about the boreal forest and you immediately go, oh, we can make profit there. Or you look at like the waterways in Superior and like, oh, there's ways to make money there. So I think that's an important part of conservation, right? Is making sure that you're keeping those companies in check and the idea of capitalism in check in some of these areas, right?
It is the exchange of respect that the water that I am taking, the forest products I'm taking, the food that I'm taking, all we give back in the past for this immense consumption is the poisons into the water, to the, oblivious nature that we are causing such huge impact on the very beings. Every one of us is connected by the fact that I could ask everyone right now to hold their breath. And without a doubt, there's not a single human being on earth listening to this. If you start holding your breath in like less than a minute, you're all going to be thinking not about what I'm talking, nothing else. You're going to be thinking about your next breath. And where do we get that next breath? From the trees around us. So why is hugging them such a evil thing? Or the waters that come out of our tap. We are that water. And so, just being reminding of that every single day, that humbleness and respect for a world that is fully alive and full of help for us if we would just honor it.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a passing the torch analogy, but I was just thinking about your comments about, from Bill Mason. And of course, he pointed to those toxins and things in Paddle to the Sea. And then, of course, along come the McGuffins and the many things you're doing and continue to do. I think that's so really important for listeners and viewers to understand that there are people out there that want to do that. And the other takeaway for me is, instead of the riches, Ben, I often talk about enriching experiences. No, I'm not rich. I'm enriched. And that usually comes from our outdoor experiences, no matter where they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we wrap up here, you already stole all my questions.
Yeah,
so do you
sorry.
have any? I guess I'll throw it over to Joanie and Gary. If there's anything we didn't cover or anything else that you wanted to.
There's a ton we didn't cover.
Yeah.
We'll have to have you back and talk about some of the more contemporary things. We've talked a bit about, covering one's life in 35 minutes, so that is not right. But yes, please tell us about, maybe just the next things around the corner, because big projects take a lot of time, whether they're books or movies. And so never mind the Conservancy, because that's an ongoing day-to-day thing. But what's next?
It sounds small. And
Nothing's ever small.
I should let Gary answer. I've been doing all the talking. I'm like, you Bill.
Yeah, we'll let Gary answer then. Let Gary answer.
What's your small thing?
I'll just... it's really important to listen to young people these days. And
I like where this is going.
Yeah.
Our daughter said to us one day, look, guys, I can't hear about the sort of, the earth would be better off without us kind of stuff, because I'm only in my 20s and I got my whole life to live. I need to feel some sense of hope. And so that was a real wake-up call for me to look at, the time that we spend with family and friends in the outdoors that we are so blessed with here in Northern Ontario, especially, that it is those small things that we do. And it's not about big journeys anymore. For me, it's about spending time with my 94-year-old mom. It's about spending time with our daughter and, doing a little trip somewhere in Canada each year to discover the beautiful landscape. We've actually seen lots of it in Northern Ontario, but not a lot of the rest of it together. And I just really want to emphasize that it isn't about the great big journey and the great big ideas and the great big organization and the great big dream in the end. It's really about the small daily stuff. And those folks that are out there showing us and reminding us how to grow food, how to have music together, how to be together, how to have conversation, how to be around a a table without being on our phones. That kind of connectedness that we need, us adults in the room and older adults really need to model that for our children, for our grandchildren, and get back connected with the natural world in just small and simple ways. We live in a wondrous world. We've discovered much of it together. Our love for it has held us together through thick and thin, because it's not always a smooth road. So, yeah, do you want to say anything, Gary?
Yeah, I think at this particular time, with what's happening south of the border, it's that I think we just need to spend more time with family, with our elders. Joanie mentioned her mom at 94. Our daughter, we're going to do a nice little road trip out east and spend time together. And that's what it's all about, is friends, family, and just cherishing what we have, and staying tight, firm, and sharing the love. And that's really what journeying for us is all about. And being able to share that.
That's a good way for me to summarize anyways, Ben, is that, in this time of Canadiana and this resurgence of Canadiana and Canadians, we're looking at, Ben, two people who are true Canadians who have made a difference environmentally and otherwise through their avocation and their vocation. And so we're all enriched, as I said earlier, to have you both on the Backroads Bill podcast.
Thank you, Bill and Ben. It's just been a joy to be with you today. And I get you, Ben. I mean, I know. Poor Gary, he wakes up every morning and I boom, jump up and it's boom.
Well, the funny thing is I have about 10 more questions now that popped up after your monologue over there. And now we ran out of time, so it's fine.
Another show.
Another show. We'll have you on back at some point. Maybe when you make your way up to our area, we might have
in person.
Yeah, we might do something fun. Maybe at the Quality Center. We'll see.
Yeah, okay.
That would be wonderful.
I think we should bring
the big canoe over.
Yes, okay. Anything you want, we'll do.
Sounds great.
All right.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Well, a big thank you to Joanie and Gary, not just for the chat, lots of super interesting and important work, of course, that they're doing in their community and area, but they also supplied some great photos. So if you're listening to this on your podcast player of choice, you can check out the video version of this podcast on northbayecho.ca or the North Bay Echo YouTube channel, either or, and you can see some of the great photos that Gary supplied that we kind of sprinkled in throughout this episode, which was pretty cool. And while you're also there on our website, you can check out all of the new and past episodes of the Backroads Bill podcast and all of the other podcasts on the Echo Network. Of course, we're also on the North Bay Echo YouTube channel if you prefer video versions of podcasts, or if you're more of a on-the-go listener, we are available on major podcast platform players, including Apple and Spotify, with new episodes of this podcast drop every single Wednesday morning. So that wraps things up for Bill and myself this week. Check back again next week for another Backroads adventure.